Welcome to Mr. Mom's World Speaks, where we cover topics like food, family, friends, fun, and fur. Two-legged, four-legged, or eight-legged, because Halloween's coming. Sorry, that was 10. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Russell to the show.
Hey guys, how you doing? How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm going to try not to use my glasses,
Okay.
because my doctor said I should try that. I have a few questions here, if you don't mind answering them, Russell.
Absolutely.
It's great. By the way, this tea is insane. Actually, Russell made this tea. It's chai tea with way too much sugar, and I'm loving it. Okay, first question is this. Why the name Mr. Mom?
Good question. Mr. Mom came into effect about 20 odd years ago, starting out in the fostering world. Had a bunch of kids. I was a stay-at-home dad. We ran our catering company from home. We began to foster. And first time in kind of my married life, we actually got cable. So I was really watching the Martha Stewart-y kind of shows and the, DUI or whatever, not DUI, the DYEI or whatever the heck those things are. Well, some of that too.
Wasn't driving quite under the influence, but cooking maybe.
And so the kids would, Daryl would say, hey, Mr. Martha, Mr. Martha. Well, the kids started calling me Mr. Martha, which was great around the house. But then we went out into public. And so they were calling me Mr. Martha. And people were doing that. So I thought, at the same time we changed the name of our company, I thought, what a great name, Mr. Mom's World. People would kind of have a whole different, like, what, isn't it supposed to be Mrs. Mom's World? No, wrong set, right? So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that's why.
You are one big mister. I love that. Hold on a second now. Would you let us know what Mr. Mom does, please?
Oh, gosh. Mr. Mom does lots. Okay, so the short answer, which might be 20 minutes. Mr. Mom is a caterer. I'm an author. I've written 25 cookbooks, 3 of which have been published, 4 which is on the way. I've got a kids book out, which is called The Adventures of Boo Boo. There's 15 in that series. We have our dog treat company called Boo Boo and DeWolf. We have our own line of jams. We have our own line of jewelry coming out. Somewhere.
Are you wearing it?
I am wearing a piece of it.
Cute.
Yep.
Ooh. Wow. Actually, it's not really cute. It's more like cool.
It's
rustic.
masculine, yeah. So we got
really
a whole
nice.
line of that coming out. So we have a ton of stuff going on. I speak still as a guest speaker, as a keynote speaker at different organizations for fostering, adoption, health, in the sense of how do we self-care. So there's just lots going on in my world.
It's definitely never a dull moment.
Never a dull moment.
I get that.
Plus the 10 kids, right?
10?
Our 10 kids, yeah.
Did that go up from the last
No,
time?
it did
that
not go.
That is amazing. Okay.
No.
I want to go back to the cooking part.
Yes.
How did you learn to cook? Who taught you to cook, and what gave you that passion?
So cooking. So my mom has been in the restaurant industry since I was a baby, and so at 6 she owned her own restaurant, and I would go in and help her out, serve the soup to the counter and pour the coffee until I burnt myself so badly with a tea pot, and so that stopped for a while because she got really mad that I burnt myself. But then she owned several restaurants, as I was younger. And then I started work in a fast food 24-hour restaurant when I was, I want to say 12, 13, as a busboy.
Okay, that's
and
pretty
my
young.
mom managed it.
Oh, I see.
And so, so then I worked there for many, many years. Over the years, my mom had these great women in her life that helped her, taught her how to bake pies and soups and all those kinds of things. My grandmothers were amazing cooks. So it's just been kind of a whole gamut of these women, and I'd love to say there were some men in my life that could cook. My dad could make a mean dumplings, chicken and dumplings, but it's been these amazing women.
Yeah.
And food has always been one of those things where you sit down at a table, you tell stories. I remember my grandmother going to her house, and she would just sit down and she'd say, okay, let's have a bowl of soup. And then we'd just talk about stuff. And I couldn't have been more than, I don't know, 9, 10. And we'd just talk about,
Sweet.
the farm and those types of things. And then as I went to school in Red Deer, I had to go to lunch at my grandma's house. But my other grandma had to move in because they were both getting old. So the house was then divided in two. So I had to literally walk through one room and into the living room to get to the other one.
Wow.
And in the meantime, I was fed donuts and pie.
In each house, each room?
No, in the first one.
Yeah.
Because she was the, how shall we say, full-figured grandma.
Okay.
And then I went into the other one where I was fed homemade minestrone soup, garlic buns, creamy garlic buns, beautifully baked sausages.
Wow.
Anyway, so that's what I
That's
grew up
amazing.
with.
So
Yeah.
your kids, you probably, provide that for your kids.
You're funny. No.
Okay.
So my kids, my husband is an amazing cook, and so he's the meat and potato kind of guy. When he's at home, we
my
get
dad is
that
too.
beautiful, dinner.
Roast.
When it's Russell's turn to cook, hello, pizza? Yes. Deliver 4 large, please. Or I throw it all into one pot. We have chili, we have stew. I cook way too much at work or think about food way too much. But for me, and you know what? The kids love it when I cook because they get easy crap, restaurant, junk food, and that's...
Then again, kids enjoy that.
Right? Exactly.
It makes us lazy for kids.
It does make us lazy, but it also makes us free of mind. They're not crying, I don't like this. Oh, you put too much of
and
this in.
with 10 kids, I'm sure you'd have to make like 6 different
It's a
meals.
restaurant. It's a restaurant in our house.
Yeah. Okay, actually, tell me the story of your first cafe.
Ooh, my first
Speaking
cafe.
of restaurantes.
So I was 19 when I bought my first restaurant. And it was the restaurant that my mom had ran previously, not just prior, but previous.
In Red Deer?
No, this was in a very small town in Eckville. So Eckville,
where's that?
Eckville is between Red Deer and Rocky Mountain House.
Okay, that's amazing because I've performed in almost every small town in Alberta and I've never heard that one.
Oh,
Is it really small?
So you're old enough to remember this name. Keekstra. The teacher that taught that the Holocaust didn't happen. You remember that? It
No.
was Canada-wide?
Really?
Okay, yeah. Anyways,
my
that's the town
God.
I grew up in.
Oh my
so that was where it was. It was a corner truck stop, and it was this tiny little restaurant. And that was my first one. And then I bought an addition at 19. Then I bought another one in Penhold at the same time. So it was in a hotel. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Can you think of a fond or interesting memory from Babushka's Cafe?
Oh, that was our first restaurant that we owned in BC. Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, I don't know if they're fond. We talk about them all the time as a family.
But you can't forget them. They're memories that you're just like, it's there.
And it was memories when we were all as a family, right? So Babushka's Cafe was a tiny little cafe. I think we had 31 seats, 32 seats. So when we first started up, I was managing a large chain downtown, and chain restaurant downtown. And so I started this kind of on the side. And my theory was it was supposed to be a place where my kids did not want to be. Because if they had to work for a living, they truly didn't want to be there. Well, long story short, I ended up leaving the restaurant downtown. And so survival was of the utmost, right? And it was a tiny little place. And what we didn't realize when we signed the lease there is that 29 businesses left the mall within a very 6 months period. So of course that built-in business for us was gone. So we ended up putting on these Ukrainian buffets, 31 items for $9.95. Now this was going back, I'm going to say 20 some years ago. And so literally we would pack the place 3 seatings, pack the place 31, feed them all in this little tiny house kitchen. It was a tiny, tiny, tiny restaurant. And my son with glasses this big, I don't know how old he was, 10 or 11, he was the little cashier. Everyone loved him. My daughter was doing dishes and clearing tables. My mom was in the back doing the dishes. My husband was cooking the pierogies. But it was a time, like I said, where we were family. We still talk about those days, and my kids still tell me how hard they had to work. And And yeah, so that's kind of the start of it. And then the frozen piece of it started with, again, because the restaurant kept getting slower and slower because the mall was dying out. We took our frozen product to a farmer's market, and we literally took it in a blue tote. So we had ice in the bottom. We took our pierogies in this blue tote.
Yeah.
We fried them up, and it was gone. Well, and I went, okay, well, this is a good little thing. Well, from that point on, we grew and we grew. So we were doing literally, at the time, 6 markets in a weekend.
Whoa.
So I would drop off my 8-year-old son at one market at 5 in the morning, race home, load the truck with another freezer, another coffee machine, whatever else we were doing, pick up my daughter, she would be dropped off at another one, race home, get another one, and go for myself. And then my husband at 4 o'clock would take a big truck and gather us all up, right?
Unbelievable.
It was crazy.
Seriously, how many pierogies would that have been?
Oh, God, I can't
Hundreds.
tell you. Well, it's the reason I don't eat a whole lot of pierogies today, because we had to make them all. Well, my mom and my husband were phenomenal. And again, you have to remember, we all worked full-time jobs as well, besides trying to keep this
Unbelievable.
alive.
So you had to cook after work?
After work, yep.
Like, what, 2 days before the weekend?
Oh, God, all week long we kept going.
And freeze them ahead of time?
Yeah, because it was 6 markets on the weekend. We eventually went down to one big market, the Ladner Village Market, which was one of the original markets because it was so done. And then we eventually had a big truck. We eventually had 2 tents that we'd set up, baking on one side, the cooked and frozen pierogies on the other. It was crazy.
Holy, so then that was, I guess, your transition into catering? From the restaurant slowing down, then you started doing markets.
Exactly.
And then what happened after? Like, how did you get into catering?
Well, I think it was just a natural process because what we realized was the catering was the gravy. You know what I mean?
But what was at first where someone said, "Hey, can you do my wedding? We love these pierogies," or something?
Babushkas. It was. Oh, I can tell you exactly where it was.
Yeah.
Again, it was
Okay.
for $9.95 per plate, which I can assure you is never going to happen again.
No kidding.
But it was on a 2-story. I don't know if you know the arena in New Westminster. So you have to literally, the banquet hall or the banquet room is upstairs. So imagine 200 sets of plates and dishes we had to, no elevator, right? So again, my children, right, they were hauling this stuff up. And here's their first experience to us. So cheap on the dinner. So they had us cut the you know the candles when they come with the string, the wick tied together. So the kids, being kids, didn't realize that you had to trim them. So of course the tablecloths that we rented got burnt because they fell off and burnt. So they wouldn't split the cost with us, the bride and groom, because we should have known
So
better.
you lost money.
So we lost money. We had to replace all these tablecloths.
Unbelievable.
Right? Anyway,
But it was the
it's a
beginning.
learning.
It was the beginning of a beautiful thing.
It was, yeah, absolutely.
And
We've
after
done
that,
very well.
it just took
Snowballed,
off.
yeah. It does. I think the biggest time it took off was, 15 years ago-ish. We did an event for the Ladner Business Association. And literally, well, there was 2 times. Literally from that moment on, we couldn't stop. We were going to retire at that point. And the phone never stopped ringing. We were
Wait, you were going to retire, when was this?
Oh, I don't know. I'm going to say about 15 years ago, 10, 15.
You were going to
I'm looking at my
retire
daughter
then?
to get some confirmation on the dates. But yeah, it was, well, we were going to retire from catering. I was going to switch to something else.
Oh, sorry. I'm like, you thought you were saying you were going to retire.
No. I don't
You
think I'll
can't
ever retire.
No, I don't
Yeah,
think you
yeah,
will.
no.
You're not the type.
I'm not the type. No,
No,
I'll
no,
always
no,
find
no.
something Daryl will say. And the other big kind of, we appeared on CTV again, I'm going to say 8-9 years ago-ish. And that appearance, the first appearance, in fact, we just had on my show the host, Amer, Helene was the host at the time, a co-host, and we just had him on my show. But it literally set our company on fire from that point on.
Wow.
From the time we left the parking lot, we were already starting to get feedback on the I don't know, what was the social media then? I can't remember. Was it Twitter?
MySpace?
Was it?
No.
I don't
No, this
know.
was 9 years ago?
9-ish years
So
ago,
Facebook
yeah.
was just started,
and we were getting
so.
emails, and the phone never stopped ringing. And so it really, we can remember where there was key things that really flipped us. And it's, we've tried to slow down since then a couple times.
And you
but
haven't been able to?
Haven't been able to, right? This beautiful
Wow.
venue that we have our studio in, that we use
love
as a
this
venue,
place.
it literally fell at our feet. And we've been catering here for 8 years, off and on, every week for a Christmas show that we were the restaurant for. We opened up the kitchen and became a restaurant for a week. And then coincidentally, the health board was here along with the hall manager at the time, and the health board said, well, what are you going to cook? I said, well, we're just going to make soup and salad. She said, well, aren't you going to do your pierogies and stuff? I said, no, we can't. It's not in a fully approved kitchen. And the health board said, yes, it is. And so I left literally that day.
Wow.
I said, I'll be calling the board. And so we've spent, big bucks in here of our own money because I was married here. Daryl and I were married here 20-some years ago. But just because we believe in the hall, as you can see, it's such a beautiful hall.
Oh, it is. My uncle was married here too.
Yeah, and like I said, we've tried to keep the integrity of what it looks like. But so again, we kind of had to jump back into that catering issue business, and then lovely COVID hit for us. So
I know.
we invested all the money and COVID came, right? So
But you're still...
we switched quick enough. What do they call it? Pivot. We
Yes,
pivoted
that's right.
very quickly.
Yeah. But
Lucky.
you have to do, if you don't, then... But you're not the type not to pivot either, so...
Yeah. Well, and I keep looking out at my daughter, but my daughter is quite brainiacy, and so we just she's a problem solver like me, and we kind of just go I panic because I think to myself, how the hell are we going to keep everyone employed and keep everything going, and she just kind of goes, okay, let's just stop the panicking and let's just think about what we're going to do. And that's what we did. And so we just constantly turn and twist. And how do we, this show was one of them, although we've tried, you've been on one of my previous shows.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah. And so this at the Galbraith.
That's right.
And so this was, this again was one of those pivot things where how do we keep our name out there? How do we get our name out of there? What are we going to do? So that's kind of how this fell into our lap as well. So.
Yeah. Just want to go back to food.
Yeah.
So, pierogies were your thing, but what's your favorite food? Do you have one?
That we make?
That you
I
make
do.
or that you like to eat?
Okay, favorite type of food would probably be Japanese. Love Japanese food.
Do you make Japanese food?
I've attempted it. I wouldn't say I've perfected it, but I've made sushi. But here in Vancouver, I have friends all across Canada, and they come to Vancouver and go, oh my God, the sushi's so cheap here, right?
Yes, I have the same thing.
Right? And so I came very quickly to the realization, why am I making this? It takes you 8,000 hours to come up and make this stuff, and you can go
it's
buy
really
it. It
time-consuming.
is very,
Yeah.
it's like Chinese food where you have to do all the prep. Although, now with the I don't know what they're called, but the Japanese bowls, where you just kind of pile everything now.
Yeah, like rice and
oh, yeah, see, that's going to be up
sauce
my
and-
alley. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
No, I love that.
Yeah.
I'm actually grateful they have those in food courts. So when
Right?
you're just hungry and you want something healthy
Quick.
and tasty.
Yep, yeah, totally.
Okay, let's pivot for a second here.
Okay.
Is there more of that tea?
Yeah, we can get some more tea.
Okay, awesome. This is so good.
Okay, well, when you start stuttering,
Yeah, I know. Like, I'm really hyper. Is there a lot of sugar? It just tastes so sweet. I'm enjoying
it's
it.
because I made it. Let me just step
Okay.
off and get you something.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to pivot to away from food. And thank you, darling. We'll see if you
And-
don't burn yourself this time.
No,
It's
I'm going to
funny.
burn you. It's your cup I'm filling.
I love it. The milk is in the jug. That's awesome. Okay,
Yes.
10 foster children.
They're all adopted now, right?
Yeah.
And it's
10
8
10
adopted,
kids.
and I have 2 because I played on that other team.
Okay, so in your lifespan,
Yeah.
how many kids have you adopted and fostered in total?
Okay, in total, we've adopted 8. I have, like I said, I have 2 Bobby's, my partner, executive producer, all that, of a variety of stuff. She's my oldest, so she's 32, 33, somewhere in there. And old age. And then I have
In her prime.
and then I have an 8-year-old child living with autism and a 9-year-old child living with autism, and everything in between. So in our home as foster parents, we had well over 60 kids
Whoa.
throughout the...
Amazing.
I thought it was pushing 20 years, but of course it probably seemed like that. But I was on our going away, or our final party for fostering, our actual social worker that opened her house said, no, Russell, it was only 16 years. So so in that 16 years, yeah, I mean, we had that many kids come through. So
And so how did you get into it? What made you want to start fostering, and like how do you how does one go about starting that?
Well, so jumping back to when we originally started Babushka's Cafe and Haberdashery, it was at that time when I left the corporate restaurant downtown that I said to Daryl, I said, I'm suffering burnout. We'd already started our own little Babushkas, and I said, I can't go back to work. I can't go back to the corporate world. It will kill me, literally. It was the drive, it was the people, it was, there was lots going on for us. I said, let's revisit becoming foster parents, because we
talked about it before. Okay.
Yeah. And we had been approached when we lived in Victoria, a couple years prior to that, by a woman or by a social worker that had a gay teenager that they wanted to put with gay men to kind of culture that feeling of security and stuff. And we were already moving. My daughter was looking into modeling and that kind of stuff at the time. And so, and my husband was taking a job promotion here. So it just didn't make sense. But at the time, it just seemed, okay, I think it's right time. And so we went into it very open-hearted, closed-minded, because we thought, oh, hey, we're parents. We've already got 2 of these little guys. This will be no problem. Give me 10 of them. Yeah.
No?
Well, thank God we had an amazing resource worker. And she just said, let's start you with 2. Let's see how that goes. We'll give you kids, don't you worry. Let's just start you baby steps. So that's what she did, literally. We got kids that had been removed because of a drug seizure. And so they were temporarily removed until the parents could find a new home and that kind of stuff. And so we had 3 of them for, I don't know, I think it was 10 days. It was amazing, right? And then we were placed with a couple babies. Again, not my thing at the time, because I was really scared of the whole SIDS thing. I just, had a really bad perception of that. And but then our family just grew, and we had up to 8 kids in our home fostering. We had this beautiful little boy who is now pushing 19.
Wow.
And he came to us at 1.5 years, right? Our son Dylan, and he was our first long-term kid that just didn't go anywhere. And I knew, the interesting thing is I knew in my heart, and I said to Daryl that night when he come, I said, he's not going to leave us. I just knew.
Wow.
And the goal of a foster parent is to the safe return to family members. That's your goal. Yeah. That should be your goal as a foster parent. But I just somehow knew in my heart he wasn't going anywhere, and he didn't. And then
So you can't have, when people adopt animals, there's foster fails. You can't have a foster fail with human beings, because they're always going to go back to their family. But then things happen. Because I have a friend of mine who adopted or fostered as well, and she thought it would just be a few months, and it's been almost 4 years now. So,
and that's kind of the misconception, is that often the ministry doesn't know what's going on in the home, and when you get children in care, often they don't know the severity of what possibly went on in the home. And maybe the parents present really well. So the hope is that they're going to go home right away. But, my experience over the years was that kids usually stayed in care for a minimum of 1.5 years before they worked through the system. There were those exceptions, for sure. But usually about 1.5 years. And then, like you say, some of them never go home.
Or they try and they come back.
And they come back, and again, we have a daughter that we adopted. They were in our home for, I think she was 4.5, but she came at 3 months with her sister.
Wow.
And because the parents were just continually trying, and then finally, the courts just said, sorry, you've really, your chances are over. But we believe that family is so important that we've tried to work with those families outside of,
That's
even though we've
fantastic.
adopted, right?
It's funny to hear you say that you were getting burnout in the restaurant. Let's adopt 10 kids. Most people would think that is way too much work. That is so stressful. It's a totally different kind of stress.
It is a different kind of stress.
Rewarding.
But the kid, that's it. So the piece of the fostering world that I didn't like was the business side of it, right? The kids, good Lord, hand them some paints and some paper on the floor and a book, and and a cartoon, and they're done. That's it. And tell them that they love them, and hug them, and tell them that you will try to make everything as best as you can, because you're not going to be able to fix everything in their lives. There's just no hope. And that's kids. Then you have the whole bureaucracy side of it, where you can't be called dad, or you shouldn't be called dad until those kids are adopted, and you know, you have to do the visits even though you know the parents aren't healthy for these kids, and you know
that I can imagine would be very emotionally straining.
Yeah, exactly.
When you know that this is a negative situation for that child, because you're living with that child, and then you have to
pick up the
you've got to
pieces.
let them go. Yeah, when they come back, try to make them feel whole again or whatever. Yeah,
absolutely.
I think you're amazing for doing that. I do.
Well, thank you.
Because, I mean, like I said, I just adopted 2 puppies, and I think I'm like, I got 2 puppies. I'm so busy. And these are like human beings, like whole household. It's incredible.
But my grandmother who raised 12 kids said, you know, well, this is what my mom always says: throw another potato in the pot. That's just throw another potato in the pot.
I actually feel the same way. I do. And it does feel like it's the more the merrier, really. You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay, a couple more questions.
Yeah.
We spoke about that. I just want to ask you what the most rewarding thing is about fostering.
Oh, God.
I mean, I know there's tons.
I'm going to tell you a story. You're looking at my 32-year-old daughter right now, but I'm going to tell you a story, what she told me, that was probably one of the most rewarding stories.
Okay.
So my 8-year-old son, who's now my 21-year-old son, we were celebrating his birthday. We had a bakery in Surrey at one point, and so we thought it was easier to have that birthday party there, because then his mom and dad and whoever else wanted to come could come. So we had gathered all as a family, and his little face was just planted against the window. So she never showed up. So the next day, my daughter, I read on her Facebook, my then 17, 18-year-old daughter, she writes, today I looked in the eyes of sadness. And it broke my heart, but then you realize, holy shit, I did okay in that girl, right? Because she got it. She got it. It wasn't about her. It was about this little boy that was just waiting for his mom to show up for his birthday and never did.
Oh my God.
So that was, I think that was one of the key moments I went, okay, we're going to be okay, right? You go through your family shit, you go through all that, but we as a family are going to be okay. Yeah, I think that was it.
Awesome. Okay, well, thanks, Russell. Thanks for talking to us. And where are we going to go from here?
I don't know where we're going to go from here. Are we done?
Maybe a break.
Well, you're going to cut this piece out that we just...
Yeah. You're going to snip this
Okay, so I think
bit.
we're done.